Welcome everyone to today's webinar on Adxstudio portal branding and web design. My name is Travis Jule. I will be your presenter for today. I'm going to, over the next 90 minutes, talk about the various techniques you can use for updating the look and feel of an Adxstudio portal's website. It's a very broad topic and we don't have a lot of time, so the goal is to just kind of blast through everything and give you an overview of what the portal is capable of, so you'll have a better sense of which techniques you can use and where to get more information when you approach your own projects. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, feel free to ask them through the chat window. I'll do my best to address them if I see them. So that said, a couple housekeeping things. I'm sure you're all aware of the Adxstudio community site, seeing as how that's likely where you signed up for today's webinar. But the community site, community.adxstudio.com, is a great resource for any sort of documentation on our various features, as well as access to forums and blogs and getting more information, including, if we were to type it in, portal branding. Also, is just a good practice for those of you who are developers or work a lot within the CRM. One thing you might want to do, if you haven't already in the portal, is just go the community portal, is just go to the search and type in cache invalidation. What that will do is that'll take you to a link called Manual Portal Cache Invalidation to Refresh Changes, which is just a little JavaScript bookmarklet that will refresh the server cache for your site on the CRM. That's very helpful if you've ever been updating settings, updating snippets in the CRM, and then gone to your portal, hit refresh, went, why aren't my changes being reflected? Sometimes they're cached, and this will save you having to constantly go and recycle the app pool. You just take this little bit of JavaScript, paste it into a bookmark or a favorite in IE, and then in my case I put mine just up here on my favorites bar. So diving into sort of the basic overview of the portal, I've set up a demo of our out-of-the-box community portal here. As you can see, I'm logged in as a user with admin rights, which gives me the front-side editing access. So the simplest, most basic way to change anything content-wise within the portal is just through the web page copy. So every web page on the site has a CRM entity in the back end. Part of what it has is a copy section, and I can edit that either by clicking edit on the page here from the bar, and then I can edit my page using the TinyMCE WYSIWYG editor, or I can get right down and dirty in the HTML if I so choose. I can also access specific sections such as the copy just by hovering over it and clicking the edit button. That'll be reflected in my CRM here. Everything is under portals, and then as I go further along, it would be portals, web pages. And here I have a list of my pages and their copy and content reflected here as well. The other thing for updating the layout of a specific page can usually be done by changing the template. Each web page is connected to a template. The templates are found under portals, page templates, and that's just a mapping between the site, the web page, the site, and the layout. Usually an ASPX page in the code base, though it can also be a liquid template which we'll discuss later. So, for example, practically speaking, that means if I go to a page, and I don't like the specific way this page works, I can just go to the edit button. I can update it to something like that, and it'll go, and my layout will change on that level. If you have the basic portal, the nice thing about that is usually there's an example of each of the different type of templates, so you can sort of get a sense of what they look like. The other thing we can do is we can change where the templates point in terms of the source code for them. So right now we're using the community portal. This is the home page layout. If I were to look at it here in my template section, I would see here's my home template for the community portal, and this is where it's pointing in my Visual Studio code base. But if I wanted the community portal features, but say I preferred the layout of the company portal homepage, I can just update this rewrite URL to point to company instead of community. Save that. Now, when I refresh my cache and refresh my page, you'll notice my layout changes as well. And if you are a .NET or an MVC developer and want to create your own templates and bring them into the site, that's also something you can do. So you could, for example, here in Visual Studio, find your home page, copy it, change it to your liking, create a template for it. We won't discuss about that too much because that's more development than it is branding. So let me just flip that back. And then we'll move on. Now, also within a template, we have what are known as content snippets. Content snippet is here under portals, content snippets, and true to, as you'd guess, they're just little blocks of text or HTML that we can use to update things. So here, for example, we have a little content snippet for our header text. Also, in addition to web pages, we have something called web files. Web files are very important when it comes to branding because it'll let us upload files into the CRM. They'll be stored as notes on a web file record, but it'll let us upload things like images or CSS files, and that'll help us very quickly control the look and feel of our site without having to delve into code. So, for example, if I want to put a logo up here in this header section, I can just go New, Child File, Browse. It'll bring up my page. I'll choose my logo here. When I pick it, it's automatically will create the partial URL. That's how I will access the file on the portal. So in this case, because I'm uploading it under Home, it'll be /generic logo hi.png. And it's always a good idea when you're uploading, especially things like images and CSS files, to hide them from the sitemap, because your sitemap can get really ugly if you just have a list of various images. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to save that. Now I can go into my content snippet editor, and just clicking here, I can insert the image. And I'm going to make that about this big. And then if I want to tweak it more, I can go within Edit HTML, and I can add a CSS class. I can wrap it in various things. I can put it in a link, whichever I'd prefer. And then when I save it, there it goes. Okay, so we have a couple questions that I'll just stop and address. One is regarding if you have your own CSS, can you use it and customize the Bootstrap CSS? The answer to this is absolutely, and we'll look at that a little bit later. Another question is just asking about the recording. Yes, I'm recording the session, and the recording will be available on the community site likely tomorrow or early next week. So I will move on from there. So another very basic way we can update the layout of our site is using site settings. So within our code base, the default code base, we have various prefab layouts for the headers and footers of the site, and we can pick which one we're using the site settings inside the portal, or inside the CRM. My apologies. So if I go to Portal Site Settings, we see here we have the header template site setting, and for this example, we're just going to use our basic portal layout here. Right now, it's using the header navbar, so we have a little header with a search area, a logo section, and a top navigation bar. But if I'm not happy with that, I can change that to, say, header copy. When I save that, if I go back here, update my site cache, as you can see, I just got something far simpler. Just the search, sign-in link, no navigation pane. The third prefab one is called header tabs. And what that will do is it will display the navbar, but it will display them in a tabular form. like so. Now, in the past, we had in the description listed what the different options were, and I see that that is no longer the case. So just to reiterate, one, you can find them within the code base here. They're within the views, shared, and they're just anything with header in front of them, header copy, header navbar, header tabs. Also, if you fancy yourself adept with MVC, you could create your own header custom, put header custom in the site setting, away it would go. So that's, and then I will just flip this back to navbar. And likewise, we have the same, as you would expect, we have the same setting, only footer template. And with the footer template, they did include the various options. So I can pick the one that best fits my site, go with that, or I can make my own if I am strong working with .NET and MVC, or I can use Liquid, which we'll cover towards the end of today's session. So beyond that, the main way we're going to update the look and feel of our site is with CSS. So Adxstudio out of the box is Bootstrap compliant. So I can take any Bootstrap theme, or I can create my own Bootstrap CSS, bring it into the site, and it will work. Some quick resources for that is here's the Bootstrap customize page, and if I'd like, I have this very massive form that I can fill out, controlling everything from the various colors, my font types, my sizes, iconography. It's a very involved form, and you can spend hours going through it and filling it out if you so want. If you want to, once you have it, down at the bottom here, you can compile and download. You'll get a Bootstrap CSS file and a Bootstrap min file that you can then apply into the site. A slightly more friendly version of that is something like Bootswatcher, and it's basically the same idea. I just have the advantage of being able to sort of see what it looks like as I update my various items. So as I make my primary button green, it changes. If I want to make it black, I can do that as well. And then the same idea, when I'm done, I can get the CSS, bring it in. For our purposes, we're going to use something just called Bootswatch, which is just a place where we can get free themes for Bootstrap. So we have these various themes we can browse. I'm going to choose superhero, I think, because I'm a fan of superheroes, and also just because the color scheme is different enough, you'll notice it. So what we want, you might also want the actual CSS for customization. I recommend getting the min. So I'll just save that. Now once I have that, I can go into my portal here, and all I have to do is go new child file, and Adxstudio is going to recognize the CSS extension. So when it finds one as a child of the current page, any file with a CSS extension, it's going to insert that into the site header dynamically, and then that will become part of your page's CSS. That will also cascade down to the child pages of your current page. So I'm uploading this under home, so this should apply to the home page and anything underneath it. So if I just go browse, and then here's my bootstrap.min. I want to make sure the partial URL has the CSS extension, and in the case of Bootstrap, I do want to make sure that that name is unchanged because we have special handlers for bootstrap.min versus, say, your custom CSS. Hide it from sitemap, save it. And it doesn't look like anything happened, but that's just because when you upload a CSS file, it takes a refresh for everything to get loaded. So, ta-da. The other thing about that is now that this has been applied, this is applied to the home page as well as all the child pages, such as content. But what I can also do is I can upload another CSS under one of the child pages and have that CSS only apply to the child pages and the pages beneath that. So here, for example, I have my blog section, and because this is blogs, I want to set it apart from the rest of the site. So I'm just going to go back to Bootswatcher and just grab a different theme. Let's say Slate. I'll grab the bootstrap.min for that. Now, when I upload the child file, my blog content has changed, as well as the pages. I don't think that page isn't technically beneath blogs, so my apology there. So my blogs page has changed, but my content pages remain unchanged. So in an earlier presentation, I believe we did the same thing for forums. Yes, we did. If at any point we are unhappy with the CSS, it's really easy to get rid of it. We just click the Children button. This will show all the child elements of the current page. So here we have a Bootstrap file, and I can just delete it. And now I'm back to the usual, our pre-selected theme. So what I can also do, because the portal is Bootstrap compliant, is I can use all the Bootstrap classes within my content section. So I'm just going to edit down here. So if I go to Tools, Edit HTML, I can, if I'm so inclined, use anything that is out of the box Bootstrap, like alert, danger. I can also, we also support natively out of the box all the font awesome icons. So if you want to insert some glyphs, you just need to know the correct classes for that. and it's quite simple. So anything that is supported within Bootstrap, and for those of you who aren't aware of everything that is available within Bootstrap, the documentation is here, getbootstrap.com/CSS, and it talks about everything from the buttons to the responsive utilities to tables to the scaffolding, etc. Not only can we use the classes, we can also use the out-of-the-box plugins. And one thing that was requested by quite a few people in the run-up to this particular presentation was things like carousels. So I thought I would just briefly take a minute and show you how to set up a Bootstrap carousel just using the out-of-the-box Adxstudio. So I'm going to go to my Jumbotron hero area here in my copy, edit, tools, edit HTML. And rather than making you watch me code, I've cleverly pre-built a carousel complete with images I've uploaded as web files before. And I'll just walk you through the various elements if I can. So Jumbotron's just the Bootstrap class that shows the large marginless box. And then here is our carousel proper. So we want to give it an ID. We want to make sure it has the class carousel, class slide, as well as data ride equals carousel. Then within that we create a wrapper for our individual slides. We call that carousel inner. I'm using divs. This could also be, say, an unordered list. So this could be UL class equals carousel inner as well. Then we have our individual slides. Each slide is denoted by the class item. And then the class active just indicates which slide will show first. Within that, we're putting an image, and then we're putting a caption, which we're denoting by the class carousel caption. And as you can see, I have 4 slides here. I then have my indicators so that I can navigate between the different slides. So all that is that's just again, it could also be a div. An ordered list or an unordered list is usually best. Give the class carousel indicators, and then within the individual list items, we set the data target to be the same as our carousel ID, set the data slide to which slide it will go to, and the numbering is, of course, based on the ordering here. So 0 would be the first one, etc., going down. Simple enough. And then we have our carousel controls. And what we do there is we just create a link tag, and we want to make sure our href, again, matches the ID of our carousel. Set the role, and then set the data slide to either previous or previous or next for next. And then within that, we can, here we're using glyph icons, we could also use images, we could also use text, etc. Here we have a little bit of screen reader text for accessibility. Now once I have all that, once I click OK, there's my first image. When I save it and refresh it, it should just start up by its own, as it does. So, and here's my captions, and here's my indicators. Now, one thing I'm not crazy about when I look at the way this theme has configured the indicator and the caption is sort of how close they are together, and also the size the size of the text and the fact that the text doesn't show up great against the background of the image. So that will bring us to our next topic, is sort of customizing the CSS. Now, there's two ways I could do this. One is I could take my Bootstrap or my Bootstrap min and go in and change and update my classes there. My personal preference is to create a site-specific CSS where I just override the individual Bootstrap styles. I don't know if one's more right than the other. I find my way of doing it easier, especially when you're dealing with the min files where it can be really hard to find what you're looking for exactly. So I'm just going to go into my Visual Studio, go File, New, File, and get a style sheet. And within that style sheet, we were going to upload the carousel captions and the carousel indicators, which I've actually already done in the previous session, but I will do again. So we're just taking the carousel caption class, we're adding a semi-transparent background, we're making it flush against the bottom and left edge of the image, we're increasing the font size, making it bold, and also offsetting the text about 25 pixels off the edge of the image. We're also moving it, instead of being aligned center, to be aligned left, and we're going to make it span the entire image. Then with the indicators, we're just going to drop the indicators down a little bit so that they don't press up against the caption so much. So once I've done that, I can save that, and I'll put it in my documents, and I call that carousel example 3. So now that I have that, I can just go back to my portal, new child file, and browse it, hide it from sitemap. And what I should see when I'm done is a much improved caption image. And this is also, I should point out, this is specific. The web files are specific to the site. So if within my CRM, as I do in this one, I have multiple websites, I can have multiple CSS, bootstraps, etc. applied to each one, as well as within the pages of the site. Now, the other thing I can do, if I'm not keen about uploading it all the time and I'm comfortable with Visual Studio, is I can take my CSS and, in the old-fashioned way, save it to the CSS folder. Go to my master page, add the CSS link there, or add it to the specific page I want it. If that's your preference, no one can stop you. It's just that if anyone later is has to address any of the stuff and they are less skilled in Visual Studio or don't have the same server accesses that you do, there's it can become problematic, though it can make you also irreplaceable if you're the only one that knows where all this stuff is. So from there, I would just like to touch sort of on the responsive elements within the portals. So the responsive elements are essentially what they are in in Bootstrap, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the term responsive CSS, that just means that as my screen size gets smaller, my page resizes itself gracefully, so that if I'm looking at this on a phone, for example, I can still see my content as well as if I were looking on a large monitor. The easiest way to control this is just like we've done everything else, and that's with our that's just using the out-of-the-box Bootstrap classes. So those classes, for those of you who are wondering, we have the ability to, here we have the ability to make stuff either visible or invisible based on the screen size. So one thing Portals does on with the nav bar, I believe, is if I were to look at my HTML in Firebug, we would see that I have this masthead, for example. It's hidden when the screen becomes extra small. So as I get small, away it goes. And I could do that. I could do that for anything. I could wrap my copy here within that, etc. I can also make certain things visible, invisible within my content sections. More likely than that, you'll probably use the scaffolding elements, and that's just putting things in rows. Bootstrap divides the page into 12 columns, and then I can indicate within the scaffolding how many rows something will take up at different screen sizes. So if I go div class equals row, I should put that in quotation marks. Then within that, I can go div class equals call for column, MD for the screen size, so that means at the medium screen size, it'll be this, and let's say 8. And then I can also go call, I believe it's SM, let's go 4. So that means at the medium size, the medium or bigger size, it'll take up 8 columns. At the smaller column size, it'll take up 4. And then my content. And then beneath that, I will do the exact opposite. And when I save that, and just for demonstration purposes, I will put a very garish background on it, just so we can see this in action a little bit better, I think. So save that. So we see right now it's taking up about 2/3 of the page to worlds 1, but as I shrink, that should, now it flips. Now it's only taking up 1/3. And as things get too small, it'll naturally degrade down to one column. So beyond that, the other thing we're going to want to do with responsive is this is more of a general CSS thing than Adxstudio specific thing, and that's just using the media keywords within CSS. So if I look at a Bootstrap CSS, for example, I see a lot of things like that. Media min width 768 pixels. So what that's going to do is that's going to apply to any screen that is 768 pixels wide or larger. So what I can use that for example, is as I shrink down to a smaller screen, I can have my fonts become smaller, or I can decrease my paddings on certain elements. In addition to min width, I can also have max width. Likely example here somewhere. Same idea. Max width would be anything that width or smaller. So, and then I can also combine them. I can go min width equals 768, and let's see if I just find a quick one. Oops. There. So I can go max width. Oops. Right. And I can also control the specific type of screen. So I can go screen, or I can go print. I can go max width equals 1024 and min width equals 768. Actually, I would probably want to reverse that because that would show nothing, but that's a simple way to, not necessarily a simple way, but that's one way to control within the CSS your page as it degrades on different medium, be they phones or tablets or screens or print copies. So I'll take a quick moment for a breath. If anyone has any questions about Bootstrap and the classes or responsive CSS. If not, I'll plunge right into liquid templates. Okay then, let's plunge straight into liquid templates then. So this is personally my favorite topic. First, the liquid templates are documented on our site, on our community site, under the configuration guide. And as you can see just by the amount, it is a fairly massive topic. It could be a couple webinars in and of itself, but we'll just cover sort of the high-level basics. What do we use it for? What can we do with it? Now, in addition to the documentation as it relates to ADX on our community site, there's also a link here, .liquidmarkup.org, that just explains more about Liquid in general. Liquid's basically a scripting language that we can use within the CRM that the code will recognize and parse. So anyone who's familiar with using ASP or MVC or any other scripting language probably will not have a lot of trouble understanding the concepts behind Liquid. So what Liquid enables us to do is it enables us to dynamically access certain elements within our CRM, within, say, specific content sections, elements from our web page entity or elements from our user entity, that sort of thing. So one way I can use Liquid, I'll point out first before I go any further, is that it is set off by these little double squiggly brackets that indicates that I am going to insert some liquid and that I'm going to insert a liquid object. The exception is that if I have tags, if I want to insert some processing power and not just a property. So in the case of, say, an if statement, I use the squiggly bracket and then the %sign. Quite simple. So one way I can use that is I can use it within the content sections of my specific site. So here I have my content page, and what I'm going to do at the bottom of it is I'm going to display the content of a snippet in my CRM, but I'm only going to display it for logged in users. So only users who are logged in will be able to see this message. So the way I do that is just go to edit my HTML, and I'm going to put it down here. So right. So we're good to go. I'm going to create an if. I'm just going to create an if statement that's going to look for the current user. And user is the keyword for the logged in user. So if the user, and then to end the if statement, just like in, say, Visual Basic, we go end if. Okay, and then within that, I'm going to display the snippet. So instead of squiggly bracket parenthesis, I'm going to go squiggly bracket because it's just a property. Then I'm going to use the snippets keyword and then specify the name of my snippet. And within the snippet, I can place a pipe and insert a default value if I so choose. And one thing, yes, wait, and when I'm done, just close the tag off. And it's that simple. So when I'm done, here's my code. I'm going to save that, and it's going to show up like this, much like with when we upload the CSS, until I refresh the page and give the content a chance to process it. And there it is. So just to prove that I am not cheating, I will just show you where the snippet is in our portals. Content snippets, members only, and then if I update it, save it, and come back to here, my text will ta-da. And also, if I'm not logged in, say because I'm on a different browser, my content is invisible. So that's one use. I can also use that within Snippets, for example. Snippets and content sections are probably the main point for that type of code. And we can do a lot of things like that. We can display a list of child links. We can grab the current time. We can grab information related to the specific user. We can make content available again based on the user's role. But I think more impressively, especially given the topic of today's presentation, is we can use it to create our own headers and footers for our portal, complete with our own HTML. Now that's very important for a couple of reasons. One is, I know in addition to getting Bootstrap themes, a lot of people get Bootstrap templates, which include a bunch of HTML. A lot of times those Bootstrap templates are built for WordPress, so they don't natively work with Adxstudio. So it takes a little bit of tweaking to put the right class names and the right HTML structure together so that works. In another case, say you're working on a government website and it has very high accessibility standards. You can use liquid templates, custom headers, custom footers to insert extra markup to meet those standards. You can also, in the case of like the person who asked earlier, someone gives them, here's the CSS from my old site, here you go. Well, that's based on something that may or may not be Bootstrap, so it's nice every now and then to be able to massage the markup to fit your CSS rather than recreate your CSS. So let's look briefly at how we do that. So just as within our code base here, we had different headers, prefabbed headers built out of MVC. We can just do the same thing here in our portal. So if we go to portals, web templates, we can create we can create a new one. What we're going to do, just for this example, I should point out, is we're going to recreate the generic header navbar template, with the exception of we're going to take this user button, and instead of making it a button sitting up next to the search box, we're going to bring it down onto the navbar so it sits there. And fortunately for you, you won't have to watch me code this whole thing because I have created previously. So just here within my web template section, I give it a name. We leave the MIME type blank. I will explain what the MIME type is for later. And then I just insert my markup. So here's just my HTML markup where necessary, where I need content from the CRM, dynamic content. That's when my liquid comes into play. So here I am just checking a site setting called search enabled to see if I should enable the search. So I assign that to a variable, then I check it within an if statement. I also assign another variable to be the page with the site marker search. if those things, if this is true, if the setting is set to true and the site marker exists, then I go ahead and I create my form for my search, and that's just mostly an HTML form. The one limitation of Liquid is that it cannot do .NET web form stuff. So I cannot. So while I can make an HTML form like the search and have it post or get to something, I can't create a form and have it post back to, say, the CRM. So that is most of the information sort of only comes one way. It comes from the CRM to the portal. I can't send it the other way. If I need to do that, I need to go into my code and make a web form. And then here I'm just creating a snippet called, or I'm displaying a snippet called header. Notice here I've inserted the keyword editable, and that'll just make my snippet editable using the front side editor. As I go down, here's my markup for my navigation bar, and here's where I've put my button code. So I'm checking for if there's a user. If there is, I'm just going to put the user's name, and this sort of concept is true with any entity I can access, such as the page, such as a web link set, etc. I just dot and then the name of the field in the CRM. So here, for example, we're a little further down where we're getting the web link set for our profile navigation right here, and then we're just doing a for each loop. We're going to loop for each link in that web link set, and then within each link we're going to create a link with the URL and the name. And then likewise, if here we have the else, if the user isn't logged in, we're just going to display a button that asks the user to sign in. And then here we have our nav bar proper. The reason we put this here, of course, is because we've just used the Bootstrap class pull right to float this all to the right. So here we have our header nav bar, and we're doing exactly the same thing, just on a grander scale. We're getting the primary navigation web link set, checking that it exists, and then just walking through each link in the web link set with some additional checks if we have display child link set, if we have sublink set, so we can make the markup to display the drop downs. And here you can see all the elements for the web, for web links, no follow, tooltip, image, handling for all of that, and all of this is documented on the site. So once we have this in place, we save it, and then what we do is we go back to our websites, and on each website, our community portal here, we have options for a header template and a footer template. So I can set to be my my web template that I've created. I can also set the footer. So this, the way the precedence works is this will take precedence over what is in the site setting. So even though my site setting for header template might be header nav bar, because I've specified this applies above that. So once I've done that and I've saved that, now when I refresh my page here, what I should see, sure enough, my navigation my user dropdown has gone down into the nav bar. And notice that because I included things like that, those editable options, I still have front side editing capability within my header, even though I'm using Liquid, which is really quite convenient. Stop for a question. Okay, you cannot use, there's a question about using Liquid templates in a web form step. And the answer to that is no, the reason being that, as I said, Liquid cannot post back to the CRM, so we can't process the web form in that case. You can use Liquid for entity lists and entity views, but you cannot use it for entity forms or web forms at this point, which is a shame, but it is currently just a limitation of the technology. But that is a good question, and it's a good segue, because in addition to headers and footers, I can also create entire page templates. So, the header and footer is all well and good, but like I said, if I have those strict and specific, say, accessibility standards, or I have a WordPress Bootstrap template that I want to use, that won't be enough. I need to have my whole page comply with my new markup. So I'm going to just show briefly how we can set that up. And the way we do that is just as before, under Portals, Web Templates. I just create a new example, and I guess for clarity, I'll go back and I'll explain what we're going to create, and then we'll see how it's created. So what we're going to do is, right now we're using a template called full page. So here we have our content, and that's about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom Liquid template that's going to show my content in the column on the, in a large column on the left, and then I'm also going to show the contents of a web link set called secondary navigation, small in the left column. And within that, we're going to use something called blocks, which those of you who are familiar with master pages will likely understand quite easily. So here we have our master template. We're going to create two templates. We're going to create one template that has sort of the general markup, but leaves us holes to make specific changes as we go down to inherit. And then we're going to make a small child template that inherits from this master template and fills in those blocks, so that this lets us reuse code and reuse content. If we have one section of our page that's going to be, if 90% of our website is going to look exactly the same, but the other 10% is going to be spread out over 15 different templates, we don't want to recreate that 90% 15 times. We'll create it once and then create 15 smaller templates that just implement those small individual changes. So here we just have our master template. One thing I'll point out when we create full Liquid templates is we have the option of either inheriting the header and the footer, in just dealing with the body section. The body section, for those of you who are curious, is basically everything from beneath the nav bar to above the footer. So basically everything that's in dark blue here. But I also have the option of forgoing the header and footer and recreating the entire page and creating the markup for the entire page myself. That's useful in some cases. Say I have a specific page that shouldn't have a header, for example. Maybe my intention is to pop it up into some sort of modal iframe, or also if I want to create a page that is not a web page. What I mean by that is, say I want to create a RSS feed, or I want to export the contents of a view into Excel, so I can forgo the header and footer, create the correct headers for Excel or for RSS or PDF if I'm feeling brave enough. And then what I do is I just set the MIME type down here to be the MIME type for that specific file type. So MS Excel in the case of Excel. Here though, we are going to, for simplicity, we are going to inherit the header and footer. So we're just dealing with the container. We're going to grab all the pages. We're going to grab all the items in the page.breadcrumbs and then loop through and display them. And then, of course, the end, the current page. Page, as you might have guessed, refers to the current web page. Then what we're going to do is we're going to display the page title. Beneath that, we're going to create a block for our left column and a block for our right column. So we use this block keyword, then we give the block a name, and then specify where it ends. Now I can also put some markup within here, which will be the default, which would default should someone not specify that block on a child page. So once we have our master page set up, we then go back and we can create the child. So remembering the name, that is example master template. We go back to example child template. So the first thing we do at the top is we say that it's going to extend the example master template, and that just tells Liquid to go that it's going to end up merging these two templates based on these blocks. And then just within here, I only specify what is within the different blocks. So again, I'm using the block keyword, the block name, and then in the case of the sidebar, I'm just getting a web link set called secondary navigation, making sure it exists, and then looping through the links in the web link set and creating the markup for each one. Then within my content block, I'm simply going to display my page, the ADX copy of my page. Simple enough, I think. So now that we have this, we have our web template. We have to create a page template for it, and that just will enable us to link specific web pages to this web template, or have web pages that use this web template. So if I go to Portals, Page Templates, here I have my active page templates. I'm going to go New. I'm going to give it a name. Going to specify the website. Then I specify the type. So if it's rewrite, it is expecting something in the code base, typically an ASPX page. So the vast majority of the existing page templates you'll see are of the rewrite type, but we want the web template type. Now we specify our web template by name. I can also, if I don't remember my name, I can of course browse for it, search for it here. Then we have the option to use the default, or use the website header and footer. So this is what I talked about before. If I check this, then I'm just dealing with the content beneath the header and above the footer. If I turn this off, then I'm responsible in my web template in specifying everything from the opening HTML tag to the closing HTML tag, assuming I want to create a web page. If I'm creating, again, an RSS feed or an Excel page, then I'm responsible for inserting the correct headers for that into my web template. Is default, we make this the default page template. You'd virtually never check that. Entity name is irrelevant to our discussion. Description is just if I want to leave a breadcrumb for the next person who comes along to sort of get a sense of what this template's for. Because I'll be deleting this shortly after this this presentation, I'm going to forego that step. So I'm going to save. So now that that's done, I can go to my page either through the portal web pages option in my CRM, but I prefer to use the front side editor. So I'm just going to refresh this so I have the latest, my latest changes reflected in my editors. And I'm going to edit the page. So instead of full page, I'm going to choose example liquid template. Now when I click save, there's my content. So here's my web link set, and here's my content. One thing you'll notice though is that the liquid I had in there before in my content section now just shows up as regular old markup. The reason for that, as you might expect, is that you can't contain liquid within the content of a liquid template. It just would not know how to parse that. So if I had my liquid template and I wanted my members only message to show up, it's easy enough to do. I would just have to take the same markup, go back to my web template, and then within my child template I could insert it, say beneath the page copy there, depending what I wanted to do with it. Another thing I'll mention is I can also use this within a bilingual site, so I can have my templates with markup in English. It's especially useful for certain screen reader sort of things, and then a French version of the same template on the French subsite that way. So I see we have a question. So the question is, how do you manage integration with CRM and third-party applications? And I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to answer that. Do you have sort of a concrete example in mind? Because that's kind of a broad topic, and the devil anytime you're dealing with third-party applications. Of course, the devil's in the details. But besides that, I have run out of things to talk about. So we still have about 13 minutes left in our session, so I'm happy to stay around and field questions until there are no more left, if anyone has any. If you don't have any questions, thank you so much for attending, and I hope you learned something, and have a good rest of the day. Okay, so the question specifically referred to AbleBridge data grids, and unfortunately I'm not familiar with that specific third-party application, so I can't really answer that with any authority. May I suggest to you posting a question on our forum, which I will actually also mention. If you have any questions in the coming days, feel free to go to our community site, and here in the forums you can post any questions that come up to you. Usually they are answered within a couple days, depending on how complicated or arcane the topic is. So also I apologize, Matt, I cannot answer your question about AbleBridge data grids.